What's up, Switches?
I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Cicero.
And this is the Switching Lanes podcast.
Today's topic, the silent victims.
Domestic violence against men.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as we were getting prepared to talk about domestic violence in general, because, of course, we know that October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, along with Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We started thinking about the hidden side of domestic violence, which is abused men.
Right.
And a lot of people don't really take it serious because, of course, it's men.
Right.
And even the men themselves, I won't say don't take it seriously, they just won't speak up on it because it for them, it attacks their masculinity.
Absolutely.
The ego.
Right.
So we did our own research and we looked into the situation because we do know that men can be victims. I mean, to me, it's always been a given. It's not something you come across often, but it's definitely a given. I mean,
I agree.
Because you got some crazy women out there too now.
I agree.
I mean, and I've seen a lot of it in not even, I don't know if it will be relationship situations because these have been videos on Facebook, on social media, but I've seen like the videos with the little girls in school that are attacking the boys.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I saw one where the little boy kept walking around the class. Now, where was his teacher? I have no idea.
Right.
But the little boy kept walking around the class to get away from the girl. Right. And the girl kept following him and kept swinging on him and kept calling out his name. And, I mean, she was going in on this boy verbally and physically. And, I mean, the blows he took, I mean, his parents taught him well. Because it took him, that video probably went on at least 4 or 5 minutes before he actually got fed up. And when he retaliated, he still didn't hit her. He picked her up and body, and I shouldn't laugh. He picked her up and he literally body slammed her, like, to the ground.
Right.
But after he kept saying, stop, 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 stop. And, of course, the first thing people were starting to say is, he should never hit that girl. He should never hit that girl. But you do have to realize, for every action, there's a reaction.
He's human and he had a breaking point. And something that we are not acknowledging enough in our society today, at this day and time, is the fact that our women are extremely aggressive. And that, I mean, it's just the thing. That's just where we are right now. Women have become very aggressive. And I'm not saying they're all that way. I'm saying that it's more common now, yeah. That we have aggressive women.
But although it's more common, it's also still that stigma that because you're the woman, you're the weaker entity and you're the victim.
Yep.
You're automatically the victim if you're the woman. And that happens when you have guys who deal with these domestic violence situations in the home. And the police get called. Naturally, the police are going to come out and look for him.
Naturally.
They're not going to look for the woman. Oh, you're the man. You're the aggressor. You've got to be the aggressor.
Right.
But chances are the woman was the aggressor. She can be the aggressor. Because women can get combative. Women can get mad. They get feisty. They decide they want to throw a tantrum. And a part of that is hitting, slapping, kicking, talking crazy.
Being all in his face.
Yeah, being all in his face.
And you expect him to take it out, and he's not allowed to retaliate.
Because
the moment he touches you, I'm calling the police. I'm glad you mentioned that. I caught, it may have been last year sometime, just flipping through the channels. I happened to catch the end, the last half of a movie, and it was on Lifetime. I have a friend that refers to that station as the Man Haters channel. I do.
The chick channel.
It's the chick channel. But I caught the end of this movie on Lifetime. And the reason it stood out for me is because this particular time, the movie was showing a man in a domestic violence situation where he was the victim. And he had been suffering through it for so long that they were now at this breaking point where she's beating him at the end of the movie. And she is really trying to harm him. And he gets to the point where he has absolutely no choice but to defend himself. You've backed him in the corner. And instead of fighting her, he simply tried to push her off of him. She tripped and, of course, fell through a glass. I can't remember if she died or not. But immediately as the police arrived on the scene, like you said, they immediately began to handcuff him and assume that he was the aggressor. And that he had started the situation. And if it were not for his teenage child being there to tell them everything that the mother had been doing, everything that she had put him through physically, then this man would have gone to jail. So it's very common. It's very common, and that's unfortunate because it's not always the truth. And a lot of times you're going to have females who, when the police get out there, they're going to change their story and suddenly become the victim. But police are trying to assess the situation and look for marks. And, I mean, hopefully she has marks on or doesn't have marks on her, because now they have to take the guy. But it's unfortunate that we view the men naturally as the aggressor, and we've trained these men, or we've taught our sons, we don't hit women. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If you're one of those responsible parents, you taught your children, we don't hit women, you don't put your hands on a woman. But this is what they're dealing with now. So they've been trained not to defend themselves.
Yeah, they're trained not to defend themselves, and then these girls are being taught or being given the idea that if a guy don't retaliate, he's weak.
Absolutely.
And I think it takes an extremely strong guy extremely strong man to not hit a woman after she's hit him.
Absolutely.
That takes great restraint.
Definitely.
That takes restraint for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But for a man to not swing back on a woman, that's good teaching, and it takes restraint. But these girls out here now, and some of these women, they have learned, or they feel like, he weak because he won't push me back. He weak because he won't get mad. Oh, you must be weak. You must be. No, you see, you're testing these boundaries, and then once that boundary is crossed, you scream victim.
Absolutely. And the issue here, in the center of all of this, these two people we're discussing were brought up in two completely different environments. She was brought up in an environment where domestic violence, domestic abuse, was a normal thing in her life. That's what she saw.
When you were talking, I was thinking that about some of the things that make people go that route.
Exactly.
Learn behaviors, the conditioning.
Some
women, as well as some men, feel like this is what they saw growing up. And this is the direction that you go in. This is just a normal part of life. And if you don't have that, something must be amiss. But that's not the case.
That's not the case.
But that's that conditioning, though. But it's crazy because if you think about it, it's not as rare as most people think it is. It's just not spoken. It's just not spoken about. It's not brought to the forefront.
Right.
But in looking at some of the statistics that I pulled up from the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, 1 in 3 women and then 1 in 4 men have been victims of some form of physical violence by an intimate partner.
And that is not a huge difference.
That's not a difference at all, really.
Really?
1 in 3 and then 1 in 4? That's not really a difference.
And that thing is, though, the difference between the male and the female victim is the man is less likely to report it.
Exactly.
You have men, like you said, you're dealing with the factor of their masculinity being put in question. You're dealing with the embarrassment and the fear of them being ridiculed.
And also their integrity, because again,
absolutely,
it goes back to, are you the victim or is she the victim?
Exactly.
They're used to the woman being the victim, so you're going to question that man. And so naturally, he's going to already be on the defensive before he even decides to call. He's already going to feel like, you know what, there's no point in me calling, because once I call, they're going to think it's me anyway. So why am I even reporting this?
Right. Because they feel like it's so abnormal for the man to be the victim, when the truth is 830,000 men are victims of domestic violence per year. That's crazy. And a man who calls the police to report domestic violence is 3 times more likely to be arrested than the woman is. Now, you called the police for help because she's the aggressor, and you have 3 times more likelihood of being arrested in that situation. How absurd. You can't even call for help.
It is. It's very... It almost goes back in the day when women would call and they couldn't get help. Almost like they were crying wolf. And now they're treating the men like they're crying wolf. So it's kind of a catch-22 now. I mean, you have these men who just don't feel... They can't feel protected because they're told that you're supposed to be able to protect yourself anyway.
Right. And there it is.
But
you're supposed to be a protector.
But the thing is, if I'm a man and I'm trying not to hit this woman, I'm not protecting myself from being hurt by her. I'm protecting myself from being arrested.
Right. From
catching charges, from losing my livelihood, from possibly losing my life. I'm trying to prevent that whole what's the word I'm looking for? I'm trying to prevent opening Pandora's box.
Beginning that cycle.
Yeah.
It's going to begin a cycle. And then once you hit prison and you get back out, now you have trouble getting a job. Yeah. Now you have another issue.
You affect your livelihood.
Absolutely.
You affect your livelihood. You affect your entire life. And if there are kids involved, that's a whole
Which
that's
is
a
even
whole
worse.
different situation, and that's
Now
even
you're
worse.
really starting a terrible cycle because
Right.
you're creating a new generation
Right.
that's possibly going to accept domestic violence.
And then on top of that, 9 times out of 10, if you have a woman who is the aggressor, simply from spite, she gonna want to keep you from your kid. Not because you're a danger to that kid, but because she's being spiteful and she's using that fact that she's a woman and she can get away with being the victim.
Right.
She's using that to her advantage.
And in no way, we're not trying to do this particular episode to take anything away from the female victim. I grew up
Absolutely not.
witnessing different women having to deal with domestic violence. So we would never want to take anything from the female victim. But I think it's a necessity for us to shed some light and understand what our men are dealing with when it comes to things like this as well. Like I told you guys when we first started this podcast, not only do we want to shed light on important topics, we definitely want to crush any double standards.
Absolutely.
We want to be able to look at everything from multiple perspectives. And I think this is a very important topic. Our men are being abused.
I mean, there's always a vice versa. You definitely have to crush the double standards.
Right.
I mean, you can't sit here with a straight face and say women are the victims, women are the victims, women are the victims without even considering that there's a man somewhere that has dealt with this or is dealing with this.
Right. And I've seen it with my own eyes multiple times. I've seen men trying to walk away, She's yelling and cursing and throwing things. He'll walk back, you run up on him. He'll step back, you run up again.
Well,
and
again,
you're making it so difficult for him to just walk away.
Again, and not only with that, again with the kids. With the teenagers.
Absolutely.
According to this document I found, 13.4% of male high school students report being physically or sexually abused by a dating partner.
Whew.
13.4%. Our kids.
Our
These
children.
are problems our kids should not be having.
Absolutely.
Their kids are supposed to be carefree. These are issues they're not supposed to be dealing with. And that boggles my mind because I'm always that parent that says, when I hear teenagers talking about dating and buying each other gifts and doing this and or he's saying I'm a one woman man, I'm like, well, first of all, you're a young man,
right?
You're a teenager. Second of all, commitment should be the first thing from your mind.
Please,
you're a child. Like, these are not your cares right now. Like, you're gonna have plenty of time to commit to someone. Now, I'm not saying to go out there and just be foolish.
Right.
However, it shouldn't be to the point where you feel so ingrained to this one person and you barely even know life. But that's another subject.
You don't know you well enough to attach yourself to another human being.
My very point. Thank you.
You still have a parent helping you with everything at home.
Thank you. My very
You
point.
don't know you well enough.
I mean, let's just be real. I didn't find myself until I was well into my 30s.
I was about to say that. I was over 30.
I was well into my 30s before I found myself. Before I got to know who I really am.
Absolutely.
And was
accepted
able to embrace that person unapologetically.
Yes.
As a teenager, you're going to go whichever way the wind blow.
Right.
You're going to go whichever way the wind blow. So to be committed to somebody so much to the point where you're accepting abuse at that young age, it's just mind-boggling.
It's mind-boggling.
But it's also
terrifying.
A part of your conditioning because we went to school with people like that. We went to school with people who thought that was perfectly normal.
I did. I've spoken to people who thought it was perfectly normal, and they told me.
We both have.
Everybody,
in high school.
It's that phrase that everybody goes through this. It's normal. No, dear, it's not.
No, it's not. And
we're going to stop that lie right here.
That would be a complete traumatic experience for some people. Because some people never experienced it. No, some people never witnessed that. From a parent.
You know what, Cicero, when it comes to a lot of different topics, I think I've said this before, I'm not certain, but when it comes to a lot of different topics, I always think about those parents who say, "Whoo, I'm so glad I had a son. I get to dodge this and I get to dodge that and I don't have to deal with this or that." And a lot of times we overlook our sons with a lot of different issues. Domestic violence is one of them. Ladies, if you have a son, I'm sure a lot of us talk to our daughters. I have a daughter. I spoke to her about domestic violence and about a lot of other topics. We talked about those things. I want her to be comfortable coming to me and talking to me. How many of you have had a conversation with your son about domestic violence? How many of you have asked, has your girlfriend ever hit you? Do you feel safe talking to me if you're in trouble with your spouse or your significant other?
How many of you have overheard a conversation with them talking